Welcome to the world of tiny. Ever wondered about the real cost of a tiny living? Today we're diving into the world of tiny homes to uncover just how much it really costs to downsize. From materials to labor and everything in between. Let's break down the numbers to see if tiny living is as budget-friendly as it seems. A tiny home is typically defined as a dwelling unit that is significantly smaller than the average house size. While there is no universally accepted size threshold, homes that are 400 square feet or 37 square meters or less in total living space are commonly classified as tiny homes. Some definitions extend up to 500 square feet or about 46 square meters, especially when including slightly larger materials that still embody the tiny home ethos of minimalism, efficiency, and often portability. Indeed, it's like a great way to own a home for less money than a regular house. But before you get too excited, it's important to understand how much they actually cost. Tiny homes usually cost about $300 for each square foot of space. However, despite this, tiny homes are generally cheaper to make or buy. On average, a tiny house can cost between $30,000 and $60,000, but some can be as low as $8,000 or as high as $200,000, depending on what extra features you want. It's often cheaper to build your own tiny house instead of buying one that's already built. But be careful not to focus only on saving money. Building it yourself might seem like a good idea, but you could end up underestimating the work involved. Even a small mistake could mean spending more time and money to fix it later on. So when you're deciding to buy or build a tiny home, several things can impact how much it will cost you. Let's break them down one by one. 1. Size of the house. How big or small your tiny home is will affect the cost. 2. Foundation or wheels. Whether you are building it on a permanent foundation or on wheels will make a difference in expenses. 3. Building materials. The type of materials you use to construct your tiny home will influence the overall cost. 4. Building permits. You'll need to consider the cost of permits required in your area for building your tiny house. 5. Utilities. Access to utilities like water, electricity, and sewage can add to your expenses. 6. Amenities. The amenities you choose to include, like fancy appliances or special features, will impact the final cost. Tiny homes offer a lot of flexibility and customization, so you have more control over keeping costs down compared to traditional homes. Building your own tiny house might seem like the cheapest option, but it still involves spending a significant amount of money up front. In reality, most people who build tiny houses spend anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 or more on materials, depending on what they want or what's available. Getting permits usually costs around $1,350 nationally, but if you have bigger plans or want fancier materials, it could end up costing more. Tiny houses on wheels are usually cheaper because you don't have to pay for a traditional foundation, which can cost anywhere from $4 to $7 per square foot. That can easily add another $5,000 to $8,000 to the total cost of the project. If you're not into the building, you can buy pre-built tiny homes. They're ready-made and can be shipped for free by various providers across the country. While it saves time and effort compared to building from scratch, these pre-built homes can be pricey, often starting at $75,000 or more, depending on the features and luxury level. Another option is to purchase a used tiny home, which can be much cheaper, sometimes as low as $30,000. However, buying used means you might not have as much control over the layout and design. Since tiny homes are usually customized, you might need to spend more money to make changes that suit your needs. Keep in mind that most tiny homes don't qualify for regular mortgages, so buyers often pay in cash or take out personal loans for financing. Unexpected expenses of tiny house. Besides the obvious costs like buying land and materials for building, there are some other expenses for small homes that you might not think about, but it's good to be ready for them just in case. Zoning laws. Depending on where you live, there are rules about how your house can be built and where it can be placed. For example, in some places, it's not allowed to put your tiny house on someone else's land for free. Utilities. Your small home needs water and electricity. If you're lucky, you can easily connect to local utilities. But if you're living off-grid, you might need to install a septic system and maybe even use solar panels or other renewable energy sources for power. Furnitures and appliances. When you move into a tiny home, you might face some challenges with your furniture and appliances. The things you had in your big house might not fit anymore, so you might need to buy new ones that are smaller. Storage. Also, since tiny homes have less space, you might need to find a place to keep your extra stuff. You could rent a storage unit, or think about giving away or selling things you don't need anymore. Insurance. Getting insurance for a tiny home can be tricky and expensive. Resale value. And when it comes to selling it later, tiny homes might not go up in value like regular houses do. In fact, if your tiny home is very customized, it could even lose value over time. Plus, because tiny homes are not as common, it might be harder to find someone to buy it when you're ready to move on. Building a tiny home involves several important financial steps, starting with finding the perfect plot of land. If you're thinking of a tiny home that stays put, the first thing to do is locate and buy your land. While leasing land for a mobile home is simpler, it's not a great long-term investment because the value decreases over time. When searching for land, make sure it's in your desired location and check local laws to ensure you can build there without any issues. Remember, when you want to buy a tiny house, you can't use a regular home loan, but there are other ways to get money for it. Getting a land loan is like getting a mortgage for a house, but it's a bit different. When you buy a house, you know its price, but it's harder to figure out how much a piece of land is worth because there's no building on it. This makes land loans riskier for lenders. Because of this risk, you usually need to pay a bigger down payment and higher interest rates compared to a normal home loan. Also, a construction loan is a short-term loan that helps pay for building your custom home. After it's done, you'll need to get a mortgage to pay for the whole house. There are different kinds of construction loans. The one for you depends on how much money you need and your building plans. Furthermore, the stick-built tiny homes are like regular houses but smaller and are the most expensive. You can also buy a tiny house shell, which has the outside done but the inside unfinished, so you can customize it. Shells cost $17,000 to $80,000 without extras like electricity and plumbing. Kit homes are even cheaper, under $10,000, and come with plans and materials, but DIY building is not recommended unless you're experienced. If you're on a budget, you might also look into manufactured or modular tiny homes. So as you can see, how much does a tiny home really cost? Well, it varies depending on factors like size, location, and materials used. Moreover, not everyone likes tiny homes. Even though they have good points, they're still hard to build because they're small. If you want to live a simpler life, think about all the money stuff you need to handle for your new tiny home to work well. Once you understand how financing a tiny home is different from a regular one, you can start your journey. And that's all for now. Thanks for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Also, if you have any suggestions or comments, don't forget to write it down in the comments section. See you next time!